Okay, let's get started is it the privatisation of the NHS? Certainly looks that way. This is the NHS Confederation website. Health leaders welcome new Elective Recovery Taskforce, but no guarantees. So the government has announced 3 new community diagnostic centres to deliver more life-saving checks, tests and scans and speed up diagnosis for local patients. And so they've set up, this is part of the new Elective Recovery Taskforce that's set up these diagnostic centres to help unlock spare capacity in the independent sector to bust the COVID backlogs and reduce waiting times is what they've said. So this Elective Recovery Task Force, is the first meeting is going to be held at number 10 Downing Street today. And so because the NHS has made progress, they say, in tackling COVID backlogs, they're going to outsource more and more service to private companies. Steve Barclay had this to say: the NHS is facing an unprecedented challenge to tackle COVID backlogs. The task force will look at sensible steps to utilise all existing capacity and slash waiting lists while ensuring the NHS always remains free at the point of use. And this is an important point because many people have been saying over the last couple of years that the government's intention is to make the letters NHS a brand, a commissioning brand. They're going to commission services from private organisations. It's basically pointing at the end of the NHS as we have known it. This was part of the statement. Experts will focus on how the NHS can utilise existing capacity in the independent sector, that's their typo, to cut the backlog. The independent sector has been used to bolster NHS capacity and ease pressure at critical times for nearly 2 decades, delivering over 450,000 appointments in October alone, approximately 6% of NHS care. Commissioning of independent sector services by the NHS uses existing budgets and comes at no extra cost to the NHS, delivering value for taxpayer money. So the question is that true? Does it come at no extra cost? Because maybe it comes in terms of bottom line dollars and cents amount. It comes at no extra cost, but the costs aren't just financial costs. So let's have a look at this report from the BMA. This is from June, I think, this year. Outsourced: the role of the independent sector in the NHS. And it's this point that I want to make from this report. The BMA has clear and long-standing policy opposing outsourcing of NHS frontline clinical services on the basis that greater use of independent service providers by the NHS could lead to a decline in standards and poor value for money, fragmentation and destabilisation of services, putting staff and patients at risk. Debi, welcome to the programme, and just ask for your thoughts on this because it looks very much like the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been coming for quite a long time, and ever since the NHS logo has always been a very interesting thing to me because we see the NHS logo on ambulances and we think, oh, it's an NHS ambulance. Often it isn't. It's a private, outsourced, independent supplier or contractor, and this has been happening within the NHS for ages, and it's been part of the deliberate destruction. And quite clearly, we're already seeing that it's not even a 2-tiered system anymore, because we know from the interview with Fran Adamson that the service in the private sector is often using substandard equipment that's been rejected from the NHS. So clearly, we're in a complete state of collapse where this country doesn't appear to have any form of health system.
Debi, could I just add to that for our viewers and listeners? Of course, UK Column has been doing some particularly interesting interviews with NHS professionals over the last couple of weeks. And your interview with Roy Lilley was very interesting because we could hear some of the opinions of people who've been working in the NHS. Roy Lilley is a NHS Trust chairman. And we've also got Duncan White coming up tomorrow talking about privatisation and whether it's all bad. But that interview has a particularly interesting twist in it. So we're going to ask our viewers and listeners to stay with us as we get deeper into the NHS. And we'd like to thank all the NHS professionals that are coming to the UK Column in order to talk about what's really happening.
Okay, let's move on then to this, and that is the news that Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for use in infants and children aged 6 months to 4 years has been approved by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. This is what June Raine had to say about it.
Yes, that caught me out until you explained that, of course, she said nothing.
No, and this is really the first time one of these MHRA press releases has come out where we haven't had any comment from June Raine in the press release at all, and I found that very telling. I also found it very telling that there was very little coverage, if any, in the mainstream press. What are they saying? Authorization has today been granted for a new presentation of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for use in infants and children aged 6 months to 4 years. The MHRA has authorised the vaccine in this new age group after it has been found to meet the UK regulator's standards of safety, quality and effectiveness. They're going to provide a lesser dose, so it's going to be 3 micrograms compared to 10 micrograms for the older children. It's given as 3 injections in the upper arm, with the first 2 doses given 3 weeks apart, followed by a third dose given at least 8 weeks after the second dose. But don't worry, because to reach their decision, the MHRA's experts carefully reviewed data from original clinical trial data involving 4,526 participants. Debi, how many of those 4,526 participants were aged 6 months to 4 years, do you think?
Do you know what, Mike? I'm beyond speechless, really. I am beyond speechless, because one thing we need to highlight too, not just the amount of children that weren't involved, but we need to inform people that this is 3 injections. So they've updated it to 3 injections. But breaking news today on Prime Minister's questions, Andrew Bridgen, to his credit, and I think we should all be supporting him very strongly, he stood up in Prime Minister's questions and directly asked the Prime Minister if he would please reconsider this decision, bearing in mind the experimental nature of mRNA, especially in children. And he was given pretty short shift back from Rishi Sunak, who assured everybody that the injection was safe and effective, and that it was the JCVI, it was their responsibility to make the recommendation. So whilst it's the MHRA's obligation to approve it, authorise it, it's then up to the JCVI to approve it for specific age groups. And that's just a short, quick answer that Rishi Sunak gave, and then he just moved on. But Andrew Bridgen did a really good job.
Well, yep. I'll just add to that, there's a lot of people saying that Rishi Sunak will soon be moving along. We shall see.
I just wanted to highlight a letter. Well, in fact, there are 2 letters. This one, I think, was from June. This is the Children's COVID Vaccine Advisory Council. And this letter in June was demanding that the MHRA do not authorise COVID vaccines for infants down to the age of 6 months. I just wanted to show the list of names on them. I mean, it's scrolling past very fast. You won't be able to see. There are quite a significant number of names on that. I believe there was a second letter went just a few days ago, again asking them not to take this step, but they did in any case. So, you know, there is a significant body of doctors within the UK against this idea of vaccinating children using mRNA technology from the age of 6 months onwards in the UK.
And they should have a proper voice in the media, of course.
Yes. So does this take us back to you, Debi?